Good afternoon. It is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. We are still watching Tropical Storm Melissa this afternoon with winds of 45 miles per hour as it generally drifts only to the northwest at around 1 to 2 miles per hour. There are already hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings out for the island of Jamaica, with still a hurricane watch out for the westernmost portion there of Hispaniola, such as the Haitian Peninsula of Haiti. Here's a closer zoomed in view on Tropical Storm Melissa this afternoon across the Central Caribbean. And as we can see here clearly, Tropical Storm Melissa has undergone some metamorphosis changes over the last 12 to 24 hours, as you can see here clearly. And that is because the vertical wind shear that has been impacting Melissa is subsiding a little bit. It is not quite as strong as what we had yesterday. And so that's allowing the mid-level circulation to become better aligned with the low-level circulation. The mid-level circulation is somewhere over here with the low-level circulation somewhere over here. So these are much closer together than they were yesterday or even perhaps last night. And again, that's because of the shear that is lessening over the system versus with what it was like yesterday. And so we're beginning to see some convective banding features that are trying to show up here to the north, to the east, and to the south of the system with this harmonial looking cloud shield that we're also seeing here. See these feathery white cirrus clouds kind of spreading outward a little bit, an indication that the system is becoming better organized this afternoon. Now, zooming back out here at the entire Caribbean here on the water vapor satellite imagery, we can clearly see that Tropical Storm Melissa is in a fairly moist environment at the moment, as you can see here with all these bright gray colors indicating lots of deep layer moisture is present surrounding the vicinity of Tropical Storm Melissa. However, though, that's going to be short-lived as we have this punch of drier air coming in out of the northwesterly direction. We can see the outline of all that dry air here on the water vapor imagery. See that black contour, darker gray shading, indicating that there is a lot of dry air here that is going to be being shoved into the system in about a day or so. And this could complicate the intensity forecast a little further because, of course, if the system is weaker, it might find itself a little further west than what models think versus a stronger system that might be able to drift northwestward a little longer, moving this over Jamaica perhaps. So we'll be watching this very closely to see how much of this drier air actually affects Melissa in the short term, since there is still some presence of vertical wind shear over the system at around 15 to 20 knots at the moment. Here's a look at the very latest aircraft recon mission that is flying through Melissa currently right now, investigating how strong it is and where the circulation currently is. And right now, over the last few fixes, they indicate that the circulation is moving slowly to the north at about 1 to 2 miles per hour, with a pressure steady at 1006 millibars. And they still have found really strong winds off to the northeast of the system, remaining at around 45 to 50 miles per hour in that ballpark of range at the moment. And it is going to be worth noting with the organization status right now with this metamorphosis change to the system, to see if the pressure is going to start falling here soon with each subsequent recon aircraft pass through the center. So now, with that being said, let's talk about how strong Melissa could get over the next 5 days and how close could it get to Hispaniola or Jamaica over the course of the 5-day forecast. Looking at the HWRF model here, the Hurricane Weather Research Forecasting Model, looking at the deep layer moisture plot here, anything in teal colors indicate lots of moisture in the deep layers of the atmosphere versus these browner, yellower shading colors indicating drier air that we talked about on the water vapor imagery, how that's going to be impacting Melissa in the short term. So another thing that we want to keep an eye on is the mid-level vortex as well. So we can see clearly where our low-level vortex actually is at the surface and where our mid-level vortex is somewhat in here. It's very hard to tell, but on this model, it shows that the mid-level vortex is way down here to the southeast of the low-level vortex. All right, so this is very much tilted either to the northeast or either to the southeast at the moment. And so putting this into motion here, the vortex remains tilted over the next 24 or so hours, as you can see here on these teal colors. You can tell by the wind barbs here where the mid-level vortex actually is and where the low-level vortex is. despite all the moisture here, the vortex is going to remain tilted with height off to the east over the next day or so. And until the vortex can become vertically stacked and aligned, the system is not in no hurry to intensify at a very quick rate until that happens. As long as the system remains tilted like this, the system is going to struggle to get better organized and to intensify at an otherwise explosive rate that we will be witnessing here perhaps over the next 3 or 4 days. So beyond the beyond the 1-day forecast here, by Friday morning into Friday afternoon, though, the vortex becomes more vertically aligned here with the low-level vortex here and the mid-level vortex here. So they're much closer together than what we're seeing right now, which indicates that Melissa is going to strengthen gradually at first through Friday and Saturday, and then at a much more rapid, possibly explosive rate by Saturday and Sunday. And you'll see that here on the latest H-Warp model, how the system becomes vertically stacked. It becomes more coherent with a bubble of very high moisture content surrounding the system. Again, keep an eye on this drier air here. If any little bit of drier air gets entrained into the system that the models are not currently showing right now, this could disrupt the vortex a little bit and not allow it to strengthen as appreciably as what some of the hurricane models are indicating here. So now if we look here into Saturday into Sunday, though, the vortex really moves slow towards Jamaica. And you can see the outline here of the island here of Jamaica, indicating lots of heavy rainfall here. The dark green colors indicate very, very heavy rainfall. But at the same time, there is a little bit of this dry slot on the northwestern side of the system. That is because we do have some adiabatic drying of the air mass here, because when air comes up and over these mountains here and it sinks on the other side, the air tends to dry out, and that's what we have here on this model, which also disrupts the amount of strengthening that the system encounters before moving over Jamaica. And then after that, the system moves off of Jamaica and then tries to recover quite quickly here and becomes a very strong Category 2 or 3 hurricane with winds that are very strong with pressures down to 947. Now, when we take a look here at the HMOD model, this is handled very differently completely from the HWRF model. And as we put this into motion, you can see again that vortex over the next day or so. Actually, as we go back here to Friday morning, we can see that the vortex is way down here. The surface circulation and spinner is to the northwest of the system. We move this forward, we can see still in about 51 hours, which I think the system is going to be a lot stronger than this given its current organization status. This tends to happen on intermediate runs where where models don't do as good of a job here, but it will have to do in today's video. But we can see where the mid-level circulation actually is right here versus the low-level circulation off to the west, which again indicates that the system is still struggling and is tilted. But the system does eventually become vertically aligned in about 3 days. So by early next week, we see a very strong hurricane approaching Jamaica, and it is moving very slowly. So again, it's either all of Jamaica or it's going to be half of Jamaica seeing the heaviest rainfall with a system like this. And then after that, it looks like the system strengthens even further into a formidable hurricane just to the northwest of Hispaniola and just to the east of Cuba in about 5 days. But there are some other hurricane models that we need to keep in mind of, and that's the HAVS A and the HAVS B model, which still indicate that the system will be well to the south of Jamaica in about 3 to 5 days, with that disagreement that we are continuing to see here. In fact, there's still not a whole lot of agreement at all with the models on exactly where this is going to go. So just because there is a tropical storm warning and a hurricane watch issued for Jamaica, hopefully the good news or the hope is that the system is going to be far enough to the south of Jamaica where tropical storm force winds do not impact the island at all. But we cannot always wish and well for things here. And unfortunately, the HAVS A model is a lot closer to Jamaica, but also to the south here, bringing the worst impacts possible to the island. And so therefore, when we look at the HAVS A model, the system does take time to get better aligned here. You can see the mid-level vortex there, the surface circulation there. We put this into motion, we can see that the system really struggles a little bit, but then once it becomes vertically stacked here, the system really strengthens. And all of this green here on Jamaica indicates very, very heavy rainfall. In fact, if we look at our simulated radar reflectivity forecast, we can see some very heavy rainfall here, maybe some tornadoes and water spouts moving over the island, which would be very devastating. Even so, the system is well to the south of Jamaica here in this case. All right. Now, just because it says a 924 millibar system here does not mean it's going to be that way. We have seen some very intense outcomes here with some of the halves A models. If we look at the previous run, it was down to 903 millibars. The run before that, 902, 903. It's been very intense here. So this is probably an outlier, weaker scenario here on the halves A, and that's probably because it's thinking that the vertical wind shear will be a little stronger, which could be a possibility here given the fact that we have not seen a whole reduction to that shear, just only a little bit, enough for the system to slightly organize today. But it's going to take a while for that system to respond to the lighter vertical wind shear, and the system is still expected to be quite strong to the south of Jamaica. Now, looking at one more model, sorry folks, we're going through all the models here. As we look at this forecast model on the surface wind plot, we can see how the system does struggle to intensify here. Again, this is probably an outlier scenario given the fact that we have seen this before on intermediate runs. On the 18Z run, it had it much weaker, but on the 12Z run from yesterday, had it stronger. 18Z run weaker. 0Z run from last night stronger, and now the 06Z run, which is another intermediate run, has it weaker again. I think it's going to definitely be a lot stronger than what this is showing right now, and it's probably going to be a little bit closer to Jamaica at this present time. And we have seen again this going back and forth right now between either a close encounter with Jamaica or a closer encounter with the Haitian Peninsula of Haiti. We need to understand that this is moving around very aggressively, and we do not know a set-in-stone forecast, as there is big disagreement still in the ensemble models that I'm about to show you, as well as the deterministic models as well. So now the big question that everybody is concerned about, and I don't blame you, you need to be concerned about how strong Tropical Storm Melissa could get over the next 5 to 6 days here. And so when we look at the spaghetti plot here on how strong Tropical Storm Melissa could get over the course of 5 days here, there is a lot of variability in the intensity guidance, with some of the models like the GFS here indicating that the system is going to remain a tropical storm virtually throughout the next 5 or 6 days, versus some of the other models like our hurricane-specific models, including the National Hurricane Center, indicating a Category 4 to a Category 5 hurricane. This is extremely, extremely uncertain here when it comes to a forecast like this, because number one, how close will this get to a land mass such as Jamaica or Hispaniola? And two, how much will the strong deep layer vertical wind shear impact the vortex of Melissa? All right, which again will guide it where it's going to go next. So we do not know how the system is going to evolve over the next couple of days here because of the vertical wind shear, some drier air getting entrained into the system, and exactly where it will be. In fact, we're still seeing very erratic storm motions with the system right now, with some motions deviating to the southwest right now and some storm motions deviating to the northwest right now, meaning that there is really no concrete answer exactly how strong Tropical Storm Melissa is going to get. But my best case forecast right now is not as high as the National Hurricane Center, because there is still a lot of uncertainty in the intensity forecast. And I really want to be generous, or not generous, but conservative here with my forecast. And right now, my intensity forecast does bring this to a Category 1 hurricane in about a couple of days, and then a Category 2 in about 3 days. And then I level this off at about a Category 3 with winds of around 115 to 120 miles per hour in about 4 to 5 days. And again, some of you might not agree with my intensity forecasts, but there again is a lot of uncertainty here between a very low end hurricane to a tropical storm to a very strong hurricane here on the order of a Category 4 or 5. In theory, with a system that moves south of Jamaica to the west of Jamaica, a Category 4 or 5 would be favored, but we don't know for a fact if that's actually going to happen. We first need to get to that point where the system is actually going to be moving generally westward. And we can still see there's a lot of disparity in our track guidance forecast here from tropicaltidbits.com. Again, please do not use this map to make decisions. Please seek official info because this is not a set in stone forecast. We cannot rely on one single model run here or one individual model, as this has been moving really erratically, either to the west a little bit or either to the east a little bit. But the majority of the model guidance right now is pretty much right over Jamaica at the moment. So Jamaica needs to be watching this extremely closely for potentially catastrophic impacts due to heavy rainfall, flooding, storm surge due to high surf as well, coastal flooding, landslides, rock slides, that sort of thing, and the potential for severe weather, including water spouts and tornadoes with this system. But if a system like the HCCA model indicates, which is a very, very accurate, highly trained, accurate model, if this stays far enough south of Jamaica and then makes this turn eventually off to the northeast, this could be much stronger than what is being currently indicated from the National Hurricane Center. And that is what we need to keep an eye on right now. But right now, for the time being, Jamaica is at a fairly moderate to high risk of getting a direct landfall impact from Melissa over the course of the next 4 to 5 days. And anybody living on Jamaica right now needs to be watching this system very closely. So now I wanted to talk about a little more about the track guidance forecast with each individual model, primarily from the European model to the Canadian model, because these models seem to be locked in on a more westward track than the GFS model that continues to be an outlier, which we will not be using that model in today's forecast for that reasoning. And so the thing that has been constant in the steering flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere is 2 ridges of high pressure. So we have a high pressure system nosing in across the Gulf. We have another high pressure system over the Windward Islands, and anything in between with this trough like this to the north. There's really nowhere for this to go. And one might think that the system, David, should go to the north because there's a path of least resistance. We talked about this in last night's live stream that it doesn't work that way in every case. And in Melissa's case, the system is very shallow and it's not very deep and vertically aligned for where it can be able to feel this weakness in the subtropical ridge and for it to be able to move directly northward that the GFS has been indicating for a while now. And so because of this pattern evolution, as we go forward in time here, the system tries to organize quickly on the Canadian model, which is more than likely a realistic scenario given our hurricane models and the National Hurricane Center that continues to indicate that the system is going to intensify pretty quickly in about 60 hours. As that occurs, though, the pattern becomes a little more complicated because this trough now across the eastern seaboard coming out of Indiana has had time to leave the scene with another trough coming into the Midwest at around this time. So it's over Oklahoma, over Nebraska, over Texas, over Kansas in about 60 hours. That allows this subtropical ridge to nose in a little further to the east here. And you can see the wind barbs here on this plot. Take note of those wind barbs. They're doing this right here, all right? We talked about this, and now instead of the system able to feel the impacts of a weaker ridge to the north where the path of least resistance, now it's getting mired underneath the subtropical ridge here that is located over the Bahamas and over southern Florida and the Gulf. And so now the system, instead of it wanting to go north, it has to go west now because of this ridge of high pressure, but this ridge isn't the same on the European model. And let's take that actually into consideration. If we look at the European model exactly at the same time here, we can see how this ridge is a little different. On the European model, the ridge is a little weaker and this trough is a little further to the west, okay? And so you can see this height contour right here. We look at the Canadian model, there's more of a better established ridge here to the northeast of the system, helping to force the system a little bit further to the west. If we look at the European again, we can see that the system now is not mired underneath that ridge directly, which means the system is going to feel weaker steering currents. And this is what the National Hurricane Center has discussed in their recent discussion. If you go look it up after this video, you can see that a ridge like this to the northwest of the system like this, and basically, in our system down here, this is going to encounter even weaker steering currents and the system could stall in this spot for about a day or so until this ridge moves out of the way, which eventually happens because this shortwave trough moves into Indiana over the Midwest and the deep South and helps to erode this western flank of the subtropical ridge. So then we get a new lane of opportunity where this system can escape out towards. But this trough is also moving, so the lane of opportunity is also moving in earnest with where our system actually is. So even so it wants to follow a path like this, it is actually going to be deviating off towards the northeast like that with what the European model is showing. But again, this is extremely sensitive, and I wanted to make it clear, if we look at our previous model run here on the 0Z European model, this ridge was just a little bit stronger, just by a hair. And that makes all the difference with how the system behaves versus other systems. So if we go back between each run, you can see just that difference. The system, for one thing, is further south on the 0Z run, and the ridge is a little stronger and actually a little weaker. And the system here on the 06Z run, the ridge is a little bit further east and a little stronger, but our system is also a little further north, complicating the forecast. And that is exactly why we see a really big cluster here of models that could go either south of Jamaica, to the east of Jamaica, to the north of Jamaica. We, again, just don't know who is going to get a direct impact or if it will occur at all. With that being said, it is important to really cover this in great detail on the key messages for Tropical Storm Melissa, because this could be a potentially catastrophic situation unfolding for Jamaica over the course of the next 5 days. We're going to read all the key points to you all that are watching this video. For number one, Melissa is expected to meander over the central Caribbean Sea for several days and become a major hurricane by late this weekend or early next week. Due to Melissa's slow motion, the risk of a prolonged multi-day period of potentially damaging winds, heavy rainfall, resulting in life-threatening flash flooding and numerous landslides, and the potential here, I'm going to add this in, severe weather, along to go with coastal flooding, continues to increase for Jamaica. Preparations to protect your life and property should be rushed to completion, since strong winds and flooding rains could begin in Jamaica as early as Friday or Saturday. Number two, strong winds could potentially last for a day or more over the Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti. In addition, interests in Cuba and the rest of Haiti are urged to continue monitoring the latest forecasts for Melissa. Number three, in addition to Jamaica, Melissa will produce very heavy rainfall across portions of the southern Dominican Republic, southern Haiti through the weekend and continuing to next week. This rainfall will result in significant flash flooding, potentially life-threatening flash flooding, and numerous landslides. So again, we are looking at a potentially catastrophic situation, folks. And I don't say that just to get views, to get a lot of people wanting to watch me. I'm being very serious. This could really be a big disaster for Jamaica and for the Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti. All right. And so looking at the forecast over the next 30 days here on how much rainfall could actually accumulate, and please take this with a grain of salt. This is not exactly what you're going to see because, again, there is low confidence here in the hatched area. But for right now, the National Hurricane Center does forecast a foot or more of rainfall to fall over the eastern half of Jamaica, a foot or more of rainfall over the Tiburon Haitian Peninsula of Haiti over the next 3 days. And again, this is a 72-hour rainfall forecast. Man, that's a lot of rainfall to accumulate. And I want to make sure I'm looking at this right. Yes, that is a 3-day rainfall forecast in Jamaica and also for Haiti. This would be really, really bad because in 3 days, the system is not going to be moving very much, and only more significant rainfall will accumulate beyond the 3-day forecast in these areas. So again, I am not surprised if we see catastrophic flooding, if not even historic, at a near historic level for these locations. So now taking a look at exactly where the system is going to be moving towards on the National Hurricane Center's eyes, we can see that the system is going to drift generally northward and then make that sharp turn because it's going to get mired underneath that subtropical ridge that noses to the north of the system. And again, depending on how vertically aligned the system actually is, will mean all the difference between a system moving far enough south of Jamaica before making the turn to the north, avoiding Jamaica altogether. But again, impacts will be felt well away from the system, versus a system that moves a lot closer to Jamaica because the system is stronger to begin with, That's what the National Hurricane Center indicates here, and moves directly on top or just to the south of Jamaica, bringing direct impacts at a catastrophic level with heavy rainfall and wind impacts as well. Right now, winds are 45 miles an hour and the pressure is right around 1,006 millibars. It is moving very slowly, if not stationary at times, to the northwest at around 2 miles per hour. Here's a look at the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds, and you can see Jamaica right now, there is a 60 to 70% chance of tropical storm force winds, while the Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti has a 70 to 80% chance of tropical storm force winds arriving by Friday morning to Friday night, if not even Friday night into Friday morning over most of Jamaica. Everybody living in this area, to repeat, I am not saying this very lightly, you need to prepare for catastrophic impacts with heavy rainfall, strong damaging winds, tornadoes, water spouts, coastal flooding, and landslides in these areas. But anyways, I do pray to the Lord in Jesus Christ that you all can please take this seriously. If you're on Jamaica, I cannot stress enough on how serious this could actually end up being. If you're on Jamaica, if you're on the Tiburon coast of Haiti, Haitian Peninsula, this, again, has the makings of being potentially historic with the amount of rainfall, the amount of damage that this system could produce as the system moves only very slowly off to the northwest and then eventually potentially to the west and to the south of Jamaica. All right, I do not want anybody to get hurt. The last thing we want is fatalities to happen because people are not prepared for such a disaster like what Melissa could be unleashing over the next 5 to 7 days. But anyways, if you did find today's tropical weather outlook and discussion on Tropical Storm Melissa very helpful, detailed, informative, and life-saving at this point, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, folks. It really helps out a lot. This is the time to get that word out to everybody that lives on these islands, including the Cayman Islands, Central Eastern Cuba as well. Share, like, and subscribe. Please ring the bell notification icon to get all detailed updates on a daily basis on the system, including live streaming discussions on Tropical Storm Melissa as well. And also hit the like button and share this video with their family and friends on social media. As always, have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody, on the 23rd of October, 2025. I might be back this evening with another live stream if necessary, as long as this remains a significant threat of rapid intensification in the long term.